Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk about S-Town, the new hit podcast from the makers of Serial. If you haven't heard of it, it's in the same structure as Serial, so we have 7 episodes, each about an hour long, where we learn more about the story and the people involved. So we begin the story in Alabama with a person called John B. McLemore, who's called the producers at This American Life to investigate a murder. It starts off with this similar hook as Serial, but very early on in the first episode, we hear John B. McLemore go on this epic rant about how shitty his town is for a good 5 to 10 minutes. And it's really interesting. It's this uninterrupted tangent. And we know that this is going to be different from Serial. We're not talking about a crime. We're just kind of listening to this guy. And I wonder if the crime itself is going to be as interesting as what he's saying. And it turns out the focus of the story is a lot on this character. He just wants somebody to listen to him. And he is a very good storyteller. He's just fascinating to listen to. He can ramble on and on about these very inane topics and also less inane topics that are really important. This story is told completely via audio, and it's an amazing piece of storytelling. Just listening to John talk, I could tell he probably had an endless amount of things to say, but Brian Reed and his producers managed to curate and organize all of his thoughts within this 7-episode series, and it gives us a pretty thorough glimpse of who he was as a person, while also painting a picture of a town that is kind of standing still, that hasn't really moved forward, in their own words. If you enjoyed Serial, I think you'll really enjoy this story. Whereas Serial kind of strung us along and felt a bit manipulative, this story really just focuses on the characters as they are, with less agenda or bias that I felt Serial had. So is X-Town exploitation? So after I finished the show, I looked up different reviews. I wanted to see what other people thought of the show, and a word kept popping up, and that was exploitation. Mainly, let's talk about of John B. McLemore. I don't think there's a black or white answer to this question, but the short answer for me is maybe, leaning towards no. I think the value of listening to his story is really high, and I don't think John would be against what's happening to his story since. I also felt a little bit uncomfortable knowing so much about a person, digging through all of his closets, ghosts, and past stuff. I think we are all weird and unique, but John is an outwardly very fascinating character. From his tattoos, the way he speaks, the way he acts, it throws everyone that meets him for a loop. And it's always a love-hate relationship with every person that gets close to him or gets to know him. So here are my thoughts on exploitation. If John was only a source of entertainment, being portrayed like some kind of weirdo or freak show, then the attention would be bad. That would be exploitative. But John seems like he wants company. He wants the attention. And also, more importantly, he's a really smart guy, and I think we have to respect that. If he went looking for a reporter, then he wants some part of his story to be told. He wants to be heard. The fact that Brian Reed went digging more to better tell the story, I don't think John would be against that. Again, he's a very sharp individual. We have to assume that he knows that this is something Brian could do. And more importantly, even if he was kind of exploited, I think it serves the greater good. And, that sounds kind of evil to even say the greater good, but I think me listening to his story helped raise my empathy and educated me about people like him, about his town. And it sounds corny, but I'm better to have listened to it. Certain stories, they just affect you in a certain way. And this was one of them. I think this podcast does a really decent balancing act of trying to entertain, yet also respecting its characters. I think it really did as best as it could have been done. I know after watching it, I feel like I've really learned something, and it's introduced me to a person that I otherwise would not have known, and his perspectives, his outlook, his struggle. Again, it affected me. I feel like it helped me grow in a bit, in a way that, other inspirational characters from history or even from fiction inspire us. So now I'm going to do a complete 180 and talk about Seaworld, and I'm not trying to compare him to a killer whale, but it's relevant to the topic of exploitation. I just want to talk about exploitation. In my opinion, exploitation could be a tool that's used for education. So there's this film called Blackfish, and it's a very powerful documentary about the mistreatment of killer whales by Seaworld. If you've seen that film, and I'm sure a lot of you have and a lot of you haven't, but if you've seen it, you'll think Seaworld is a monster, and it's very effective movie in painting that picture. But I had very, very mixed feelings watching such a biased film against SeaWorld. I remember going to SeaWorld as a kid and seeing the killer whales up close, and I was in awe of, how beautiful they look, their size, their strength, their majesty. And I also remember watching Free Willy, and according to the film and the research, that animal wasn't treated very well either. But that film and SeaWorld made me and a whole generation of kids care about killer whales more than any other animal at the time. Had it not been for SeaWorld or Free Willy, I probably wouldn't have any attachment to them. Unfortunately, their suffering was an educational opportunity for me and other people in my generation, or other people that saw those films or went to SeaWorld, to connect with these animals and to ultimately give us a reason to want to preserve and fight for them. There are millions of other animals that are probably dying and suffering and we don't care about because they didn't have a SeaWorld, because they didn't have a Free Willy. That's also how I feel about zoos. It's a good place for us to interact and learn about them and to actually experience these animals up close. I don't think people are as inspired to care and preserve them if their only interaction was through pictures or books or, online. In an ideal world, that would be enough. Just data and information would be enough. But unfortunately, we're kind of selfish, self-centered, experiential beings. In the future, I think we'll be better than this, and we'll figure out very humane ways to interact with animals. We'll probably be all eating lab-grown meat, but it's something that's going to take some time to get there. So again, SeaWorld to me feels like a necessary evil at the time. And it's getting shut down, rightfully so. It's done its job educating, but zoos are also still important for us to learn about animals. While we as a human race, our animal race, we're still trying to figure shit out. So that's my spiel on exploitation. I'm sure many people disagree or agree with me, and that's okay. And I think it's a conversation worth having and being passionate about. Anyway, so I kind of completely veered away from S-Town talking about SeaWorld, but I'm gonna wrap it back. The story of S-Town is a perfect microcosm of what our world is. We have a protagonist who is likable yet annoying, which I'm sure we are all at times. He's a certified genius in clockwork and maze design, less relatable, but he's utterly brainless in certain social situations. Super relatable, for me at least. He's very complex, riddled with flaws, living in a world that is a shit town. In his own words, it's a shit town. This podcast is called Shit Town, but he can't bring himself to leave because it's also home, just like this world is home. All right, that was pretty weak. I know those are kind of two separate subjects, but anyways, in summary, please check out S-Town. It's a great story. It's really good to gym with, to ride in a car with. You're probably gonna get super sidetracked and you might drop a weight on your foot while some kind of crucial plot point happens. Just a note. So if you've seen S-Town, what did you think of the podcast? What did you think of John B. McLemore? Do you think it was kind of exploitation? And not just for him, I guess for Tyler and certain other people in the town. Leave your comments below. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next time.